Hi, this is Maury Moreland Morrison, here to tell you Geico has more than just great savings. Much more. Yes, while Geico could help you rack up more moolah faster than you can say metamorphosis, they've also been the fastest growing auto insurer for more than 10 years. That's more like it. Furthermore, Geico has fast and friendly claim service. That might seem like an oxymoron, but it's not. All the more reason to say no other auto insurer has more than Geico. Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Welcome back to Global Spiritual Revolution Radio and Media Group out of New York City, New York. You can call us in right now at 929-477-3997. Again, beloved, that is 929-477-3997. Now, if you live outside of the continental United States of America, you can call us in right now at 1-929-477-3997. Again, beloved, that is 1-929-477-3997. If you want to email our very special guest tonight, all of your questions or comments, you can do so during the time of our broadcast tonight at Global Spiritual Revolution Radio at yahoo.com. Again, beloved, that's Global Spiritual Revolution Radio at yahoo.com. Now, you can listen to us each and every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Talk America Radio Network out of Dallas, Texas. Now, the Talk America Radio Network is the new dominant force in conservative talk radio. Amen. I am so very honored tonight, and including my staff and production team here in our studios here in Times Square, New York City, our very special guest, world-renowned clinical psychologist, certified school psychologist, amen, the world-renowned author, really a pioneer of freedom, not only with Black America, but with Africans all over the world, and that is the Honorable Dr. Umar Johnson, all the way from the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dr. Johnson, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, sir, to be with us tonight on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, sir. I'm telling you, I felt the leading of the Spirit of the Lord, including my staff and production team here, and to all of our Global Spiritual Revolution partners. This great voice of truth is a powerful speaker whom I believe that God has anointed for such a time as this. He is the author of the powerful Psychoacademic Holocaust, the Special Education and ADHD. I believe that's Attention Deficit Hypertension Disorder Wars Against the Black Boys. Amen. And we will give you that information, how to obtain that book near the end of the broadcast. And to all of our Global Spiritual Revolution partners around the world, amen, I present into some and introduce the others. Actually, this man needs no introduction. Again, Dr. Umar Johnson. Amen. We want to talk tonight, Dr. Johnson, of the specific theme and topic of the psychosis of identity in economics. Again, the psychosis of identity in economics. And I had watched your powerful videos and interview that you did here in New York City on the Breakfast Club, and you brought out revealed some stats that actually blew my mind. And you were talking about young African Americans, Black Americans spend $2 billion a year on Air Jordans, $4 billion a year on liquor and alcohol, $600 million a year on fast food. This is a psychosis beyond comprehension. What is the root of this madness, Dr. Johnson? What is the root of this psychosis of identifying ourselves with symbols that we perceive as freedom and liberation?
I think primarily it is the outgrowth of a severe lack of knowledge of self. I believe, and we know, studying and research and analysis, that Black people are so unique as shoppers in American culture because we, more than any other culture, don't buy things because we need them. We buy things because we perceive them to add value to who we are. So we will spend our entire savings on an automobile that depreciates with value because by having that automobile, it gives us a sense of value. The reason our children feel like they have to wear the Air Jordan sneaker, and of course, children from every culture enjoys wearing the Air Jordan sneaker, but Black children in particular, having a pair of Air Jordans is more important than breathing oxygen. And it's because by having these sneakers on my feet, it gives me a sense of self-worth, self-esteem, and self-empowerment. In other words, materialism has taken the place of knowledge of self when it comes to Black people.
And what I don't understand, and I believe you also said this on the Breakfast Club, that actually also blew my mind, Dr. Johnson. You said Americans, as far as buying Mercedes-Benzes, we buy twice the amount of Mercedes-Benzes as white America does. White America, even though white America has twice the wealth of Black America. This psychosis, I mean, it seems like we're the only people upon the face of the planet that has this type of psychosis on this, at least on this level. Am I correct in saying that, sir?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. And one of the other things that fuels the psychosis, two things, one of them I also mentioned on the Breakfast Club, and that is when people cannot enjoy true freedom, true liberty, true equality, they like to surround themselves with the symbols of that liberty and equality. So another reason we're so addicted to the symbols of materialism is not only just because it adds value to us, but it gives us a false sense of illusion of inclusion. By having this Mercedes, by living in this exclusively white neighborhood, okay, by having the most expensive clothing on, I induce myself into believing that I'm actually treated equal to white people in this social order. And then the third piece that has to be discussed is that Black people as a group have more disposable income available to themselves than other groups do because they have no economic responsibility for the collective. In other words, if I'm Chinese or Arab or East Indian, European Jew, Latino, Mexican, a part of my disposable income towards the upkeep of my group. So everything that's left over after bills, it's not all mine. A piece of that has to go to my community. But if you're African American, and we're very selfish in this regard. We do not believe at all that we have any economic responsibility to the collective. In fact, when you bring up the conversation, African Americans are very repulsed by any type of insinuation that they have a responsibility to fix the community. In fact, I always make the joke that if you have neighbors over your house, you have people visiting your home, they're staying too long, you're ready for them to go home so you can get ready for work tomorrow, bring up a conversation on how we need to use our own funds to empower black people, and I promise you, all of your neighbors will be out of your house in 5 minutes.
I'm telling you, we are talking to world-renowned clinical psychologist, the Honorable Dr. Umar Johnson, all the way from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I believe this man of God is a voice for the voiceless, and I just really, really felt the leading of the Spirit of God for you to pour into us, man of God. We are discussing with our special guest tonight the psychosis of identity and economics, only here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. There was a stat that I read today, Dr. Johnson, that as far as the circulation of the dollar, the circulation of the dollar stays in the Asian community, and this is interesting, 30 days. In the Jewish community, 20 days. In the white community, 17 days. But only 6 community does that dollar circulate. Is this rooted again in our psychosis as a people?
It is. It most definitely is. But I also want to say that we have to hold our community stakeholding institutions responsibility for the role that they play in the economic disintegration of the black community. In other words, this is not just about individual spending habits. That's a part of it. But we also have to keep in mind that psychologically, institutions shape behavior. So we have to ask, what is the black church doing to increase that circulation rate? We have to ask, what are black businesses doing to increase that circulation rate? We have to ask, what are black fraternities and sororities doing to increase that circulation rate? What are black community leaders and politicians doing to increase the circulation rate of the black dollar? Let me give you an example. I brought up fraternities and sororities and other black professional organizations. I was just in Baltimore, and last weekend, in tremendous respect for the first African-American male fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, tremendous respect, great friends in the fraternity. But they were holding their national conference at a white-owned institution. They were staying in a white hotel. Now, of course, it could be argued that Baltimore doesn't have a black hotel, but I do believe that there's at least one. And Alpha Phi Alpha is not alone in this. All those fraternities and sororities are guilty of doing what? Taking tens of millions of dollars and taking it to white hotels and white convention centers. Why are you doing that when we have over 100 historically black colleges and universities that are struggling to stay open because of lack of funding? If I'm Alpha Phi Alpha, shouldn't I be going to Morehouse or shouldn't I be going to South Carolina State, Bethune-Cookman, saying, hey, can we rent your campus for a weekend so we can have our fraternities reunion, our national convention? Why are we giving this type of money to white folk getting nothing in return for it? If it was up to me, the Urban League, NAACP, all the black professional groups from the Black Psychologists, of which I'm a member, to the black doctors, the fraternities, the sororities, the Masons, all of them would be required to hold their conventions at HBCUs, because just by doing so, you become an economic stimulus package to struggling black institutions.
It's interesting. I believe last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, I may be off $1 million or so, that the black spending power in 2016 was close to $1.2 trillion. Almost. I might be off $1.2 trillion. And the percentage of African American households with incomes of $50,000 or more were 27.4%. Now, here's another telling stat. The percentage of African Americans living in poverty is 23.5%. Wait a minute, something's wrong. If 50%, this is interesting, if 27.4% of African American households are making $50,000 or more a year, but yet 23.5% of Black America is living in poverty, something is wrong. Am I correct in saying that, man of God?
Oh, you're absolutely correct in saying that. And there's 3 points that have to be brought out to illustrate what's going on there in that statistic. Number 1, Black America, just like white America, suffers from an unequal distribution of wealth. So, for example, when we look at the American social order, the top 1% of Americans own more wealth in this country than the bottom 50%. And this parity, it's not much different when you come into the African American community, because when you look at your athletics, your athletes, your entrepreneurs, you look at your musicians, you know, the Jay-Z's, the Oprahs, the LeBrons, they own more than the bottom 50% of African Americans. So we have an unequal distribution of wealth within that 1.2 trillion. But here's the other part. And there was an article I read about 2 years ago dealing with this, and that is Black people at all socioeconomic levels struggle from what we all know as keeping up with the Joneses. And what that is to say that even if you're earning $70,000 a year, which is clearly a middle class home or household, but if you have a $250,000 mortgage, and if you're driving a Mercedes and your wife is driving a Mercedes and your child is attending Harvard, although you are in a comfortable income bracket, you are uncomfortably trying to live beyond your means. In fact, the article specifically said that the average African, irregardless of their education and income, and this is interesting, irregardless of education or income, the average African American is 3 paychecks away from being homeless.
In the psychology of this, Dr. Johnson, I'm trying to wrap my brain around this, is that we have Black folk who would rather buy a brand new Mercedes than to buy a home. And the psychology of this, that, I believe that you may mention also in the Breakfast Club, which was eye-opening for me, was that, we want things not because we need them, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't like to misquote people, but because of the psychosis that we have. Or for an example, okay, we got an iPhone 4, okay, then the next day the iPhone 5 comes out, then we got to pay $400, $500, $600. Dr. Johnson, this is rooted in a psychological mindset of self-hate. Am I correct in saying that, sir?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. In fact, Will Smith said it best, and he said Black people spend too much money they do not have to buy things they can't even afford to impress other Black people they don't even like. Like. In fact, let's talk about prom night. I think one of the most egregious and excessive examples of how we will go broke to outperform another Black person is prom night. I have seen some of the most ridiculous amounts of money spent to send a child on a senior high school prom. We had a situation here in Philadelphia where I think the young lady had a whole fleet of horses. Her parents went out and rented like 12 horses, 6 rows of 2, or something like to go down the street, and so the horses would pull her along in a buggy. We had a young man who I think his parents rented a Maybach for one night just to go to the prom. And so I stand back and I say to myself, how much money do they have in the bank for college or trade school or to start a business? How much is there some sort of a trust fund for these children? What about life insurance? How much life insurance have these parents purchased for these children? And so part of this excessive conspicuous consumption is rooted in self-hate vis-a-vis the need to be the HNIC. I must be the king of the ghetto. I must excel all other people
Professor.
who look like me, and I'm willing to go into debt in order to do it.
We have Dr. Umar Johnson, world-renowned clinical psychologist, one of the most powerful voices in America today and around the world. Here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio, we are discussing tonight the psychosis of identity in economics, again, with Professor Dr. Umar Johnson. Man of God, you're my hero, man of God. My next question is, when we're talking about black economics, and I believe that you said also at the Breakfast Club, and concerning the black church, that the black church collects $14 million every Sunday. But yet, we got more crack, we got more crime, we got more black on black crime. Something is not equating, something's wrong. If we are receiving $14 million in the black church, but there's no circulation of that dollar, okay? There's no black economic empowerment programs. There's no, and I believe that you talked about also the 4 institutions that are not in the black community, which is banking, school, supermarket, and hospital. So it seems like that the government of the United States is in cahoots, not with all black pastors, but a majority of black pastors, and black pastors in cahoots with the government to perpetuate, okay, this faith-based program that President Bush started, that now the black pastor is not just the new slave owner, but is the new FBI. Am I correct in saying that, Professor?
Absolutely. The faith-based initiative of former President George W. Bush that we got at the turn of the century was a game changer, because by finding a loophole in the federal regulations that allowed the government to finance church, although the Constitution clearly states that there's to be a separation of church and state, by somehow getting around that, they have been able to effectively muzzle the black church and keep them silent on all major issues that affect black people. And the irony of this is, when you look at our history in particular, the church has always been the vanguard of the black struggle. I mean, Dr. King was a pastor. Nat Turner, who led the bloodiest slave revolt of all time, a pastor. Frederick Douglass, some people don't know, was one time a pastor of an AME church in New York. I mean, when you go through our history, there is no struggle for black people separate from the church. We fought the Klan through the church. We fought Jim Crow through the church. We got slavery through the church. And I don't think we've studied enough the evolution of the black church in the post-Dr. King assassination era. After Dr. King was murdered, there was a transformation away from the black church being the vanguard of agitation, and the black church reinvented itself as the vanguard of accommodation. In other words, we're not going to march on the White House. We're not going to demand anything. We're not going to boycott the bus system. We want to sit down and have coffee with President Trump. We want to invite President Trump to come and speak at our convention. So we now have this new cowardly, passive-aggressive approach to racism that says, let's not make an enemy of our oppressor. Let's try to make a friend of our oppressor.
I believe Malcolm X said all they want to do is have coffee, but that's not going to transform the economic state of our people here in the United States of America. I'm telling you, we have Dr. Umar Johnson, a man, world-renowned clinical psychologist and certified school psychologist, amen. And we are definitely going to support you, man of God, in the building of your all-black male school. We're definitely, and I want you, near the end of the broadcast, give us information how we can donate to that cause. 929-477-3997. Again, beloved, that's 929-477-3997. Now, if you live outside of the continental United States of America, call us in right now quickly at 1-929-477-3997. The Psychosis wow, of identity and economics here on Global Spiritual Revolution Media Group, an evening with Dr. Umar Johnson. And I want to thank God for all of our new Global Spiritual Revolution partners who are listening tonight from Kabul, Afghanistan. We have a lot of soldiers. Thank you for listening to Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Also, we have new Spiritual Revolution partners from Dhaka, Bangladesh. Thank you for joining the International Ministry of Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. And also for the very first time, we have those listening online all the way from the nation of Bosnia, all right, Sarajevo, Bosnia. Thank you for listening to Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. And according to our stats here in our studio here in New York City, we have a little over 857,000 people from 160 countries, my God, listening right now. Man of God, this is interesting. I wanted for us to turn our focus into, again, I cannot get away from the psychosis of spending, specifically with young Black people when it comes to Air Jordans. And now I read something today that Nike, not just Nike, but you got Asics and Adidas, Under Armour, all these tennis shoe companies, all of these athletic wear companies. And it was stated by Nike a few days ago that by the year 2020, their sales specifically will boast at least $50 billion in profit. Again, $50 billion in profit. That is more than the gross GDP of the nation of Costa Rica. Now, and you may mention $2 billion on Air Jordans. It seems like, Dr. Johnson, that we want to buy symbols that are perceived as, signs of freedom. We would rather put something on our body than to put something in our minds in order to transform us. Am I correct in saying that, sir?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. And the Achilles heel of that is the fact that Black people want the freedom that they see white people enjoy, but they know that they can only get it through organized effort, and our self-hate prevents us from coming together to work collectively for anything through an organized vehicle. And that is what America is resting upon. America, the government, the social order, it knows that the only thing Black people hate more than oppression is each other, which is why I always say that until we hate racism more than we hate each other, nothing will change. At present, even police genocide is not as much an irritant to Black people as are other Black people. And another thing, in your title where you talk about the economics and the identity, I wanted to say that is very, very fitting, because many people don't understand that identity is a weapon. Identity is a weapon. Identity is a force to be used. For example, if I'm Chinese and I get hungry and there's no Chinese restaurants around, because I identify so strongly with my people and their success, I'm going to hold my hunger until I get off of work and either go home and eat or find a Chinese restaurant on the way home. How often do you see Chinese eating in Indian restaurants? How often do you see East eating in Jewish restaurants? How often do you see Jews eating in Latino restaurants? And how often do you see Latinos eating in Black restaurants? And the reason you don't see it doesn't have as much to do with hate as it has to do with cultural loyalty and commitment. Black people don't have the cultural commitment. And one of the weapons that have been used against us is this American identity. See, if I can get you to forget the fact that you're Black, if I can get you to forget the fact that you belong to a group of people who have been so marginalized and degraded in this society, if I can get you to disidentify with Blackness, then your Blackness is no longer a weapon. And if you now see yourself as an American, as opposed to an African American. If you see yourself purely as an American, you don't feel any guilt or shame with giving all your money away to Nike. You don't feel any guilt or shame giving all your money away to the Arab gas station or the Chinese stockbroker because they're Americans and I'm an American. So erasing our blackness has really helped other cultures to rob Black America blind.
And it's interesting that there is a website called sneakerpimps.net. I kid you not, sneakerpimps.net, and they hold an annual convention. It is the largest convention in the world when it comes to sneakers. And I want to tell our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, Dr. Johnson, you're opening up my eyes. I did a lot of digging into the history or the historicity of the athletic tennis shoe. It's interesting that, and the reason why we call athletic shoes sneakers, because within the slave trade and within slavery, not just here in the United States, but throughout the Caribbean, a lot of the slave men, a lot of the males who could not be controlled, and especially those in Jamaica. And I want to tell our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, our guest tonight is a direct descendant, amen, of the great Douglas, amen. And I'm telling you, man of God, this it's an honor to have you here tonight. But that term sneaker has an acronym for the word sneak, okay, which a lot of slaves, Frederick Douglass, Dr. Johnson is a direct descendant of Dr. Frederick Douglass, and I'm honored to interview you here tonight, man of God. That the term sneakers, quickly, is rooted in the enslavement of African people, but specifically with Black men. Now, the slaves that could not be controlled in Jamaica, specifically there in Jamaica, a lot of slaves had this iron casting that was to be placed on their feet. Either the foot was to be cut off, or a lot of them had iron casting, which they called sneakers. I kid you not. So I would definitely send you the information on that, doctor. That I cannot help but to fathom that this term sneakers, or they're also called kicks. Okay, again, that's rooted in the mental destruction of Black men, where a lot of slave owners would physically kick, okay, wearing not just these shoes themselves, a lot of the slave owners, but a lot of these shoes had rubber casing around the shoes, okay, and this is where we get the term plimsoll, okay, or plimsoll, capital Plimsoll or SOLE. And so the sneaker, okay, the athletic shoe, the sneaker, or the kicks as we call it, is rooted in the destruction of Black males, specifically in the Atlantic slave trade in Jamaica, where Black men, where African men, those who could not be controlled, would kick themselves. They were kicked by slave owners, and the slave owners wore these iron castings on their shoes called sneakers. And I can't help but to think, I only got this today, Dr. Johnson, because I listened to that program at the Breakfast Club. You caused me to dig. And I said, my God, we're spending trillions of dollars on an item that is rooted in the destruction of Black males. What say you? It's interesting.
Oh, very powerful. And to add to that, we now have a situation where they're now putting Frederick Douglass on the back of the quarter, the 25-cent piece, and now Harriet Tubman is going to be on the front of the $20 bill. They have the good Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I believe he's going to go on the $10 bill. They have several other prominent African Americans who are going to go on the $5 bill. So the question has to be brought up, with all that America is doing to Black people right now, with the backlash that's taken place
Yes.
as a result of the changing of the guard from Obama to Trump. When you look at the police genocide, when you look at all of black statistics are higher now than they've been since the 60s. Our mass incarceration rate at its highest since the 60s. Our unemployment rate at the highest since the 60s. If you have all these problems in black America, why is the government deciding to celebrate great black heroes and sheroes at the same time that they denigrate living black people? And I would argue that part of this is rooted in the illusion of inclusion, where we're now going to put black people on the money so they really feel like they're part of the American social order, so they can really go out and spend, so they can really give their money away, because now when you pull out your money, you see yourself. So that whole brainwash, that whole conditioning is even stronger. In other words, we're really going to be reluctant to pull back and say, hey, guys, let's put our money together and do something for ourselves. Why do we have to do that when we're actually on the money? If we're not part of America, why are we on the money? So people who are very susceptible to superficial programming will get swept up in this Harriet Tubman $20 bill and this Frederick Douglass 25-cent piece. We have to be smarter than that. But here's another piece. When you deal with these economics, there's another piece. You have the identity piece. You have the self-hate and the competition. You have the low self-esteem and racial inferiority. But the other point that we didn't raise, and that's the issue of hopelessness. Hopelessness. Earlier on, you talked about how we would buy the automobile before we buy a home. Well, one of the reasons why we do that is because if you're buying a home, you're not just investing in yourself. You're investing in your children and your grandchildren. You're buying that home so that you can build intergenerational wealth, because very few people get wealthy in a lifetime. See, LeBron got wealthy in a lifetime. Jay-Z and Oprah, they got wealthy in a lifetime through non-traditional routes of fame. But for most of us, if we want to build wealth, that building process is going to surpass our lifespan on this planet. So most wealth is intergenerationally. If you look at rich white people, outside of those who became rich instantaneously, you will see that the wealth has accumulated generation after generation. So if you have to build wealth intergenerationally, only a person who has a vision of empowering their descendants, only people who have a vision of empowering their descendants are going to be interested in buying a house instead of buying a car. Only those people are going to be interested in life insurance instead of Air Jordans. Only those people are going to be looking to acquire wealth in real estate as opposed to sending their child on the most expensive senior class prom they could possibly afford. See, we as a people live for the here and now because we have very little hope about what lies for us in the future. If you take out that hopelessness, black people would probably plan a lot better. But when you don't know how long you're going to live, when people are dying all around you from gunshots and AIDS and blood pressure and strokes, cancer, heart disease, then you start saying to yourself, why should I be concerned about my future? When it doesn't look like there's anything bright about my future. So that lack of a vision, that short-sightedness, that hopelessness is at the root of why we will spend everything today and save nothing for tomorrow. And that's why I always say that the European Jew will save money for his grandchildren's grandchildren. In fact, he don't even consider himself rich unless he has enough wealth to pass on to his grandchildren's grandchildren. An African American will have $5 million. Or an African American may have $2 million and say, I'm rich. You want to know why? Because he's looking at it through the lens of individual selfishness. He's looking at himself and he's saying, I have enough money to live comfortably the rest of my life if I budget appropriately with this $3 million. But the European Jew will have that same $3 million and he will say he's broke because he's not looking at himself. He's looking at leaving a legacy for his grandchildren's grandchildren.
And that's why there's a distinct difference between being rich versus being wealthy. I mean, Steph Curry's rich. He just signed a 5-year, $200 million contract, but he's not wealthy because Steph Curry doesn't sign any checks.
Exactly.
He doesn't own the team.
Exactly.
See, and this is the mindset that we have to. This mindset. Okay, $200 million. That's pennies to the Rothschilds. And again, wealth is not the same as being rich. And because if you talk about worthlessness, if a person believes that they are worthless, what they're saying that I need things, Mercedes, clothes, sneakers. I need things to add value to myself. Okay, and it gets back to that value system again. We don't value anything because it is self-hate. We don't. Or it seems like, man of God, a lot of us are 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 years old, some of us, but emotionally and psychologically, we're still tied to the bottom of that slave ship. Am I correct in saying that?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. And see, one thing that folks have to understand, what makes a slave is not having money. Because a lot of our young people, they'll look at the football players and the basketball players and the rappers, and they'll say that these guys are free, that they're no longer slaves because they have all this money. Well, guess what? We had enslaved Africans who had a lot of money. Many of our ancestors saved money to buy their freedom. Many of them saved money to buy their children. Our ancestors, some of them were allowed to have businesses even while they were enslaved. So having money does not mean you cease to be a slave. Slavery is about independence. Freedom and independence is the opposite of slavery.
Awesome.
So if we look at, freedom and independence being the opposite of slavery, how much independence does LeBron have? How much independence does Oprah have? To what degree can Jay-Z operate independently of the white music corporate structure? They cannot. In fact, I would argue, sure you are as a black person in America, the more enslaved you become unless you earn that wealth independently. So, for example, I have a lot of celebrity friends and associates, very successful persons whose names I didn't mention. I have lunch with them. I hang out with them. Very successful people. Everybody knows them. But guess what? I have more power than they do because I'm able to say what I want. I'm able to tell the truth as it needs to be told. And before they can do that, they have to consider the contract. They have to consider how this is going to affect my sales. How is this going to affect my reputation amongst white people? Because after all, it's white people who buy the tickets and buy the music, not black folk. So before they can ever freely express their beliefs and opinions, they have to think about a long list of black and white folks who they cannot afford to offend because it could cost them significantly. That's not freedom. That's not freedom at all. At all. And see, here's the other piece about it. We as a people don't want the responsibility that comes with trying to become independent. We don't even want that. Black people do not want the conversation that says, listen, if you don't want us giving black women welfare anymore, since black men complain, the welfare state prevents the black woman from being accountable to the black man, from respecting the black man, because the white man is giving us food stamps and medical coverage and Section 8 housing. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of truth to that. Because when you go back in the history of welfare, they made the black man move out the house. And even today, if you are in a Section 8 house, if that man has a felony record, he cannot live in that home. So if that black woman lets the children's father come back home after he gets out of jail, she could very well end up homeless the next morning. So you still have laws that keep the husband away from the mothers in order to get the public assistance. But here's the question we as black men have to answer. All black men have to answer this in America. If the white man came to us today and said, listen, we tired of y'all saying that we've made welfare the husband and kicked y'all out the way. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to eliminate Section 8. We're going to eliminate food stamps. We're going to eliminate all federal subsidies to poor black women. We're going to eliminate WIC. We're going to eliminate the health care programs. Are black men willing to
Yes, sir.
assume the responsibility of providing for black women and black children if the government says and leave you in charge of your own destiny. See, it's one thing to talk about what the white man is doing, but it's another thing to be willing to assume that responsibility. And because we were so used to being enslaved and never having to think about ownership and institutionalization, that some of us are scared of the conversation.
929-477-3997. Again, beloved, that is 929-477-3997. You're listening to Global Spiritual Revolution Radio and Media Group here in New York City, New York, in our Times Square studios here. And we have with us a world-renowned clinical psychologist and one of the most powerful minds of liberty and liberation in this nation and around the world, the Honorable Dr. Umar Johnson, all the way from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We are discussing tonight the critical topic of psychosis of identity and economics. Again, beloved, that is the psychosis of identity and economics here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. It seems like there is what we call the illusion of progress. The illusion, and man of God, let me tell you, I am a black conservative, and I'm very proud of it. Okay, I'm just being real. I'm a black conservative. I voted for President Donald J. Trump. I support him 100%. I am not under the illusion that he is perfect, you know. But which brings me to my next question concerning Barack Obama. What was Black America disappointed in Barack Obama? Did Barack Obama fail Black America? And if he did, can you give us some of the keys of how Barack Obama failed America, and especially Black America?
Certainly. One thing you mentioned a second ago was progress. And
yes,
one of the things that I don't think we spend enough time discussing in the black community, and that is conceptions of progress. Because we have to come up with the operational definition of what black progress means. I mean, we are at present 152 years post-emancipation. 152 years. Summer after next, we will be celebrating our 400 years since the first of our ancestors was dropped off in the 13 colonies to begin 400 years of slavery. So August of 2019, summer after next, there's going to be a lot of deep conversations taking place. Where exactly are we 400 years later? And I would argue that the definition of progress is something that has to be overhauled because too many of us have a superficial definition of what that is. For example, a lot of African Americans would consider the election of President Barack Hussein Obama as progress. They would consider all the African Americans in America with doctorate degrees as progress. They would consider all the African Americans who have ascended to the CEO position in some of America's predominantly white corporate establishments as progress. I consider it regress. And the reason I can't consider any of that progress because everything I just named was given to you by white folk. None of it you earned. If you get a promotion in corporate America, it's because a white person decided to progress. Progress must be self-sustaining. I want to say that again. Progress must be self-sustaining. If you come to me right now and say, Dr. Umar, I have a home for you and your family. My family didn't make progress. You know why? You gave that to me, which means what? You can take it back from me. And that's another problem we have when we deal with progress because black people fail to realize progress isn't just always forward. Sometimes you can go back. And I would argue that since the transition from Barack Obama to Donald Trump, black people have lost ground during the Obama administration. We went backwards while we thought we were going forward. Now, people would say, how did we go backwards, Dr. Johnson? Well, look at the unemployment rate. It's higher. It was higher under Obama than it was under both Bush presidents. The mass incarceration rate was higher under Obama than it was for the Bushes. I mean, when you look at every index of social integration and so-called progressive movement, black people lost ground. And the reason we lost ground is ours. I would argue that black America created a context that allowed racism to be excluded from the conversation on where we are as a people. When we started talking about post-racial America, America no longer has a race issue. Okay, we are now multinational. When I started hearing all these ridiculous-sounding cliches about how we moved on, while at the same time you have a Trayvon, a Freddie Gray, a Sandra Bland, a Tamir Rice, a Eric Garner, Philando Castile, how can we dare talk about post-racial? So I would argue that the government used our desire to be accepted so much that they were able to put us back 100 years by giving us 8 years of Obama.
Oh my, this is powerful. And I just heard today there was an article in the New York Post that a young man in Brooklyn paid $5,000, Dr. Johnson, $5,000 for a pair of Air Jordans on eBay. And because he did that, not only did he lose his house, his wife left him with the kid. See, again, that getting back to that psychosis. That makes no sense. It makes no sense, man of God, where you're going to take $5,000, money that you should be feeding your babies with, money that you should be paying your mortgage, okay? And this rent psychology, I don't know why black people want to rent more than they own, but we'll get to that later on. The psychosis of identification, that I have to buy that, I have to wear this, I have to drive this in order to identify myself with liberation. And that's the tragic point, because it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, doctor, that it seems like we're the only group of people who don't know who we are.
The only group, and don't want to know. So you got to
don't want to know.
Now, we have a history in this country. When we study these 400 years, we have a history in this country of trying to disidentify from our blackness as much as we can. When you go back, our first 200 years in America, we still identified as African. A lot of us don't know this, but the first 200 years, that 1619 to that 1819, we pretty much still knew who we were. That's why the churches have African in them. First African Church, African Methodist Episcopal, the African Free School. We knew who we were, and we still rallied around our culture. But at the turn of the 19th century, as we start etching up closer to the Civil War, with the birth of the abolitionist movement coming in the 1830s, black leadership under the influence of white liberals influenced us to stop being so black and stop acting so black. If you guys would stop identifying with who you are and start identifying with whom you are now with, maybe the racism would subside. And that's why from the mid-1800s all the way up to right now, almost 200 years, we have been struggling over what to call ourselves. Are we black? Are we Negro? Are we Anglo-African? Are we African Anglos? Are we Afro-European? What should we call ourselves? The only reason why we're struggling over that is because we know white folks don't like black folks, and most of us don't want to be black in the first place, and we want to be accepted by white people. And as a result of that, we think if we can find the right name, if I can only find the right name to call myself, white people will accept me. And the erroneous platform in that belief, the premise there, what's erroneous about it is we don't suffer what we suffer because of who we call ourselves. We suffer what we suffer because of what we do not do for ourselves.
We have with us, I'm telling you, I feel the power of God here tonight with Dr. Umar Johnson, world-renowned clinical psychologist, all the way from the great city and state of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. You can call us. Continue to keep the calls coming. Our board is lighting up. We have a lot of people, 1,000. We got a little over 6,000 emails. We're not going to get to all of them tonight. But one of the questions for you, Dr. Johnson, getting back, and we have a young man by the name of Yosef. He is from Beirut, Lebanon. His question is concerning the tennis shoe, what he calls the sneaker industrial complex. And his question is, Dr. Johnson, did Nike and Asics and Converse and Adidas, are they today still targeting black men or black people? Why are black people the number one target of what we call the athletic shoe industrial complex? Very good question.
Very good question. One of the reasons that we're the number one target is because of our worthlessness. We are willing to spend excessive amounts of money for useless items. So if you look at capitalism, the law of demand and supply and demand, and then you add to that, the profit margin, there's no better person to sell to than an African American. Why? Because we don't buy things for quality, and we don't buy things for necessity. We buy things because they add to our personal value. And so whenever you have a person who's shopping for self-esteem, whenever you have a person who's shopping for self-esteem, you can charge them as much money as you want, because quality is irrelevant. Necessity is irrelevant. What they need more than anything else is not the sneaker called Air Jordan, but they need the name Air Jordan on their body. And by having the name on their body, that's what gives them a sense of self. And I would add to that even the research has shown that Nike, and in particular when it comes to the Air Jordan brand, they target African-American inner-city youth, I believe 85% more than they target any other customer. So Nike is very much aware. Nike is very much aware how important the uneducated, economically castrated black male is to the success of the Air Jordan brand. And you know what's sad? Let's ask the other question. How much money does Nike invest in black people? How many schools have Nike built for black folks? How many black men have Nike gotten out of prison? How many black mothers have Nike helped get through college? I mean, on the one hand, you have us totally loyal to Nike, spending billions a year, and at the same time, you'd be hard-pressed to find one beneficial thing that Nike has ever done for blacks.
And the owner and the CEO, Phil Knight, he don't care about black folk. He has never, and listen, I tell young black people all the time, instead of you paying $500 or $300 for a pair, of Air Jordans, learn how to read the S&P 500. Learn how to read the stock exchange. They can tell you, they're starting 5 for the Los Angeles Lakers, but they can't tell you what's on the NASDAQ report or the S&P 500 today, or the Russell Index. And they'll look at you and say, well, you're thinking white. See, this is the mindset, Dr. Johnson, that our young people, and they think the world owes them something. We have with us Dr. Umar Johnson. You opened up my eyes, man of God. You causing me to dig into myself, into us. I love your authenticity. We have with us a real authentic voice, not just here in Black America, but around the world when it comes to liberation and freedom, for the African American community. And notice, I love, this is how folk do. If you love your people so much, every other group would say, well, you hate white people. No, we don't hate white people. No. But as Malcolm said, we love our people so much that unless we heal ourselves, we can't help anyone. Am I correct in saying that, sir?
You're absolutely correct. And black people have to stop spending so much time, because I see a lot of these arguments, social network television, where white people want to challenge black people as being reverse racism. Well, first of all, we got to keep in mind, invent false terminology. Invent false terminology to keep you hung up on trying to defend and prove to the world that you're not a racist. I would say black people don't have to prove to anyone that we're not racist. Why do I say that? We've never invented nor dropped an atomic weapon on anyone, but white folks have. We have never created a disease to systematically exterminate an entire group of people. White folks have. We have never dehumanized an entire race of people. White folks have. I mean, when you look at what they have done to us, there is no parallel in history of us ever doing that to anyone else. So it is absolutely absurd that a black person would even feel the need. When you really understand what racism has done to black people, it's absurd that we would even feel the need to have to defend ourselves. But again, one of the tactics of racism is to make the victim look like they are actually the perpetrator. So they keep us on the defensive so they never have to get on the defensive. And so we have to constantly put them in that corner and make them fight out of that corner. Don't let them put us in the corner. We got to put them in that corner. And see, here's another piece, too. Nobody wants to see an awakened African-American community. No one wants that. See, we have to understand all other cultures in America benefit from our backwardness. They benefit from our dysfunctionality. I mean, you have Chinese people who are millionaires in America, and they only sell to black people. You have East Indians who are millionaires in America, and they only sell to black people. You have European Jews who are millionaires in this country. I mean, you have Chinese who were homeless, black in China. East Indians who were homeless, black in India. And now they're rich off of us. So no one wants to see the black man and woman rise, because sometimes you get this thing where black people say, well, white people are against us, but all the other people of color are for us. Nothing could be further from the truth. None of them are for you, because all of them exist off of your oppression. If we straighten our back, you be imagine who doesn't fall off.
The psychosis of identity and economics with world-renowned psychologist, clinical psychologist, Dr. Umar Johnson, only here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio and Media Group out of New York City, New York. We are broadcasting live from our Times Square studios, and we are discussing, again, with this great leader, the psychosis of identity and economics, here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. A few years ago, and we were talking about identity as well as economics here tonight, Doctor. President Obama took a trip to Kenya in July of 2015. And instead of him, and here is a foreign president, President Obama, a foreign president going to a foreign country, of Kenya. And instead of talking to President Kenyatta, Uhuru Kenyatta, about economic empowerment and trade, President Obama was trying to push the gay and lesbian agenda in this man's country, the LGBT. And so it seems like there is a conspiracy, Dr. Johnson, to totally emasculate men, but specifically the black man. And in order to emasculate us, they have to emasculate the black woman. And so for President Obama to go to Kenya and to give a press conference with President Kenyatta, instead of talking about economic issues, he's talking about, LGBT rights. And gay. I'm telling you, man, I take offense with the left saying that, gay rights is a civil rights issue. It is not. gay rights and LGBT rights and lesbian rights and this transgender mess is demonic. It is not of God, and you cannot equate that to civil rights. Okay, am I correct in saying that, sir?
You are absolutely correct. But here's the strategy. Because the enslavement and oppression of African Americans has such a unique history in this country, that gives it a flavor of its own and a power of its own. Because no other group's experience, not only in America, but across the world, even remotely compares to that 253 years that we spent. Because of that, they're always trying to do what? Other struggles with our struggle to weaken the foundation of our argument. And unfortunately, too many gay and lesbian brothers and feminist sisters, they're not seeing the strategy. They're not seeing that they don't really care about black gays or black feminists. It's not about that. They're just hoping that they can use you to push the argument that the enslavement of African people was not that unique and that it could quite clearly be compared to the struggle of homosexuals and women, and nothing could be further from the truth. And when people say, well, why could it not be compared to it? I'll tell you why. Number one, homosexuals have never been systematically dehumanized in America, ever. Black people during slavery, we were considered chattel. We were not even human beings. The enslavement of Africans in America is the only slavery in human history where the victims were stripped of their personhood. Homosexuals have never been systematically stripped of their personhood. Number two, the enslavement of Africans in America gave the slave owner the right to own an entire family perpetually. He didn't just own mom and dad. He owned the kids, the grandkids, and when he died, he passed on the ownership of the grandkids to his grandkids. And so slavery of blacks is the only slavery where you owned the entire genealogy of a family. That is no precedent in the homosexual struggle. Absolutely not. And thirdly, and the same is true for women. And the same is true for women. Women have never systematically been dehumanized. Okay? They were never owned just because they were female. And the third piece, neither gays nor women ever had to deal with a situation where the federal government said it was illegal for them to get an education, and that if they got caught trying to get an education, they could be punished by death. Our experience has no precedent nor parallel. And we have to be very clear with homosexuals, even for people who support that lifestyle, and I don't, but you still have to be clear to let people in your in-group know you may have a struggle, but don't you dare compare that to what my people have been through.
Come on now.
And on top of that, what needs to also be said is the fact that are fighting are still advocating white supremacy, because the white gay male is still a racist, and the white female feminist is still a racist. So you can be gay and a racist, and you can be a feminist, and you can also be a racist. We must make sure people understand that it is never okay to compare a behavior to someone's natural state of being. Being black is not a behavior. Being gay, that's a behavior. You engage in homosexual behavior. It's a behavior, a state of action. When you are black, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to say anything. You simply have to be. So blackness is a state of being, and homosexuality is a state of behavior, and they should never be confused with each other.
With Dr. Umar Johnson here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio, the Psychosis of Identity and Economics here again on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio Media Group, here from our Times Square studio right now in New York City. You made mention, man, you're deep, brother. You made mention also on the Breakfast Club, and I believe you brought up a word, conspicuous consumption. And that's my next question. Is this what we call conspicuous consumption? Is there a difference between, or a distinction, Dr. Johnson, between what we call conspicuous consumption versus inconspicuous consumption as we are talking about the psychosis of identity in economics tonight?
I would say there's a difference. I would see conspicuous consumption as reckless spending habits. I would see inconspicuous consumption as still the purchase of unnecessary items, but with some delineation and with some caution to making sure you don't overdo it. So I would see them both as problems, but with the conspicuous consumption being more of a problem. And see, here's another piece that we have to add to the equation when we talk about conspicuous consumption, and that is the fact that people feel good when they shop. This is a psychological reality. People feel good when they shop, and we all know it because we all get that shopper's high. That you're in the mall and you got some new shoes, and then you run to get some new towels for the bathroom.
Right.
And the next thing you know it, you ever notice how you go into the mall for one thing? You only went in there to get some light bulbs because the lights go out.
Right.
Light bulbs less than $5, but you come out with almost $500 worth of stuff. And the reason this happens is because your brain which functions on momentum. Once you made that first purchase, there was a little jolt of euphoria. It was a little shopper's high. So now your brain is liking this and it wants some more of this. So you keep on shopping and you say to yourself, why am I spending all this money on stuff I don't even need? It's because you're serving the high that your brain is experiencing from the buying. And the reason your brain is experiencing because you're buying is because the brain is working from a false assumption that by possessing these things, you're going to feel better about yourself. And when you look at the fact that African Americans are racially depressed, we're a racially depressed people, that means the shopper's high is going to have a stronger effect on black people than anyone else because we have more to worry about than anyone else. And whenever you have a people that have more to worry about than anyone else, you're going to have a people shopping and buying more than anyone else.
And this neuroplasticity, and to our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, we are speaking with world-renowned clinical psychologist, the Honorable Dr. Umar Johnson, all the way from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We are discussing tonight the psychosis of identity and economics here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. And when we examine neuroplasticity, a lot of medical doctors and scientists say that whatever the brain thinks, if we think negatively or positively, or as far as self-hate, whatever state that we are thinking, whatever we are thinking, not just within the brain, within our brains, but within our consciousness, our brain goes into the shape of that thought. And so I can't help but to think, Dr. Johnson, that black people, our mindset, not all, but many, a high percentage of black Americans, their thinking has shaped not just their brain, but their world view. Am I correct in saying this, sir?
Oh, you're absolutely correct, because thoughts are things. Every thought occupies a certain amount of space and time and consciousness, not within the physical conscious, but within the ethereal consciousness. So when you're thinking, all thought takes place within an intellectual and an emotional environment. An emotional environment is the result of the core beliefs you have about yourself, your people, and your world. And I don't think we really understand how deadly a negative thought is, because that thought occupies a space and a time. And, of course, if you keep engaging in the same pattern of thoughts over a specific amount of time, then you create a habit. And if you look look at the self-hate of black people, we could conceptualize the self-hate of black people as nothing more than an intergenerational habit of putting out negative thoughts, beliefs, biases, assumptions, and premises about one another that have now crystallized into a physical form. In other words, part of the reason why we haven't made more progress as a people is because we are held in check by an intellectual straitjacket of negative thinking.
Say that again. That's powerful.
An intellectual straitjacket of negative thinking. And one of the ways we're going to get out of this, we don't use our imagination enough as a people. One of the greatest gifts of God is the imagination. And the beauty of the imagination is what? The brain cannot tell the difference between imagined reality and actual reality. The brain can't tell the difference. In other words, if you close your eyes and imagine that you were in a fight, a car accident, or imagine that you're having fun on the beach, or imagine you're on your favorite roller coaster, your body will produce the same neurochemical reactions as if you were actually there. There's no difference in brain between imagined reality and perceived reality. That's why when you dream something in your dream, your body goes through the exact same physical responses that it would go through if it actually happened. So what we have to start doing is imagining success. We have to start imagining black people fixing a situation. Because one thing we know about spirit, whatever you desire, the universe will rush in to help you with the manifestation of your innermost thoughts. So if black people could start wanting more, if we could start desiring more, if we could start projecting and imagining more for ourselves, the universe will come to our assistance to rebirth black people into who we need to become.
All right. Oh, my, this is powerful. The psychosis of identity and economics here with our very special guest, world-renowned clinical psychologist, Dr. Umar Johnson, here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio and Media Group out of New York. As we're talking about the psychosis of not just identification, but the way we spin through economics and getting back again, because there's a lot of questions coming in tonight through email concerning getting back to this sneaker, what we call the sneaker wars or the athletic shoe industrial complex. And I want to tell our young people, if you're listening tonight, that term plimsoll that I may mention, capital PLIM, SULL, which is also transliterated into the word soul, SOLE. A plimsoll was a marker at the bottom of ships, and specifically slave ships, to make sure, to predetermine if water was going to seep into that ship or not. So a plimsoll was a water marker specifically put in by the slave ship owners at the bottom of the deck where the slaves resided, so that way they could know the density and the height of the water, so they could keep out water out of the slave ship. So that was called plimsoll, capital PLIMSOLE, or capital PLIM SULL, plimsoll. And so that term plimsoll is transliterated into the word soul or sneaker. And so everything has a rootology. Dr. Johnson, from your perspective, sir, why is China targeting Africa in the Caribbean? I noticed, and again, getting back to the Breakfast Club interview you had, powerful. And I got a lot of African pastor friends and bishops throughout the continent saying that the Chinese had taken over, and they're taking over the continent. Why are we seeing this? A, and B, why aren't the leaders or the pastors of those countries both of Africa and throughout the Caribbean islands, saying anything against it. I mean, seems like somebody's palms are being greased. What say you about that?
It's all about money. One of the greatest curses in Africa and the Caribbean, as is true in Black America, is dishonest, self-serving leadership. The reason why China is being allowed to do whatever it wants, when it wants, wherever it wants in Africa and in the Caribbean is because you have leaders who, once again, don't have vision for their country and don't have hope in their people's ability to transform their reality. It really happens like this. I become president of Jamaica. I become president of the Congo, Ghana, Nigeria, wherever. The Chinese request a meeting with me. The Chinese say, listen, we want to build a certain port and we want to control this section of your country so we can bring our goods in, and we're going to use your country as a base where we can ship our goods all throughout the Western Hemisphere. First thing I'm going to ask, if I'm not concerned about my people, what's in it for me? That's going to be my first question. What's in it for me? And the Chinese are going to say, hey, we can put you $1 million US in a Swiss bank account, and then we'll build you $1 million retirement home. That's basically what they're giving out. A couple million in a Swiss bank account, and they're giving a retirement home. Okay? And so if you're an unscrupulous Negro leader and you're not concerned about the best interests of your countrymen, you're going to sell them out. The reason China is having her way in Africa and in the Caribbean is because most of the leaders in Africa and in the Caribbean, they're not leading the people anywhere. Their purpose for becoming an elected official was not to build the country up, but to build their bank accounts up. People become presidents in Africa and in the Caribbean to prepare for life after office. I'm going to say that again. People become presidents in Africa and in the Caribbean for life after they get out of office. That's the only reason why they were there. They weren't in there to lead the country into a greater day. They're not in there to reduce unemployment. They're not in there to, build better hospitals. I became president so I have my hand on the economic pulse of my country, and so I can rob and steal as much as I need until it's time to pass off the baton to the next thief. And the critical importance of Africa is because whomever controls Africa controls the world. And so you got white supremacy and Chinese supremacy going head on. It's no different than in the 60s when you had America and Russia, and they were arm wrestling over who would control Africa in the first Cold War. Now you have the second one, the white man versus the brown man for who's going to control the resources of the black man. Because the world can't live without Africa's oil. The world can't live without Africa's gas. The world can't live without Africa's coltan. Do you realize Africa is the only continent on Earth that can survive and subside itself independently of any other business with any other? Africa don't need no imports at all. Africa doesn't need a single thing from another country to survive, but every other continent must have. China needs African resources. America needs African resources. And what hurts me the most is that we're not trying to become the owners of our own resources. Why does Africa's wealth always have to be in the hands of non-African people? That hurts me to my heart. And the reason for that is African leadership, just like Black American leadership, has never been about the people. It has been about their own pocketbook.
The Psychosis of Identity and Economics here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio and Media Group. My God, we got a little over 690,000, 692,357 listeners online. I'm sure it's going to touch probably past the million mark before the night is up. The Psychosis of Identity and Economics here with Dr. Umar Johnson. Dr. Johnson, this is interesting. So when we're talking about identification and economics, I don't know how true this stat is, but I read somewhere today that 72% of Black children are born out of wedlock. I don't know if that specific percentage is at that high level or not. And my question is, what do we attribute to black children being born out of wedlock and black on black crime? And again, from your perspective, sir, should the black community start looking at ourselves and taking responsibility for that? Yes, slavery was a major factor, but also from your perspective, Professor Johnson, should we, as black men, take responsibility? Because I don't believe that when a young man gets a young girl pregnant outside of wedlock, it is because of the white man. But correct me if I'm wrong. What is your perspective and insight on that, sir?
Right. Well, we have to keep in mind that for every individual behavior, there has a set of political, economic circumstances that brought that behavior into being. So, for example, if you take the young man in your previous example who got the young girl pregnant, is it possible that that pregnancy may not have happened had his father been in the house? And is it possible that the father is not in the house because he was forced out through welfare programming? Or is it possible that the father is incarcerated because he had to break the law in order to feed his family because he himself was miseducated and economically castrated? And is it possible that that young man's family had, the young man's mother had to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet, which reduced the amount of supervision that was around for that young man that fed into that episode of teenage pregnancy? So we have to always keep in mind that although we must take individual and community responsibility, we must always be conscious that we exist in a box that we did not create. But taking that a little bit further, one of the biggest problems with that, with the percentage of out of wedlock black children, first we got to keep something in mind, and that is a lot of men as well as women, they no longer see the need to get approval from the government, i.e. a marriage certificate, in order to begin a family. So we have to look at black marriage not through the lens of the government that says we're going to count how many marriage certificates were granted to black people this year. That's not our rubric. You see, we have to look at it from a black community perspective that says, listen, I'm taking this woman, I'm owning up to this woman, I'm letting the community know that I'm taking her as my wife. These are my children. We're going to live happily ever after. Now, the white man will say they're just shacking up. But from a community perspective, that woman is a wife, he is the husband, and those are the children. So we may have to remake our definition of what marriage is, because if we keep going from the white man's definition, the numbers will look a lot higher than what they really are. But what also has to be added to the equation, especially as we deal with identity in economics, is the fact that one of the reasons the black family has been decimated and almost destroyed and is at present an endangered species is due to the fact that the white man in the post-Dr. King assassination era has done an excellent job of economically castrating the black man. In other words, you can't separate black family breakdown from unemployment of the black male. What America has done is America has made the black man economically irrelevant to the black woman. I have to say it again. If we want to fix the black family, we have to deal with the fact that America has made the black man economically irrelevant to the black woman. It hyper-educates the black woman. It will hyper-employ the black woman, but then it will under-educate the black man, and then also underemploy the black male. See, only man in America who is out-earned and out-educated by his woman. He is the only one. And then you have to look on the other side of that equation. Given the war against the black man, what are the indoctrinating messages that black mothers are giving their black daughters about black brothers? Because women are feeding. Women are also responsible for why they're not getting married. Because on the one hand, you have a brother who can't find a job, got a prison record, miseducated, no usable skill, and then you have a black girl who's being told by her mother that if that man can't put you in a nice house, if that man can't buy you a nice car, if that man can't buy you nice things, then you need not waste your time with him. So it's not only the economic castration of the black man feeding this problem, you also have a materialistic mindset that some black women, although not all, some black women are indoctrinating their daughters with such a materialist. I mean, think about it. We just talked about how much money black people are willing to spend to outdo other black people. So it's a black girl being no different than a black boy, wanting the best of everything because they've been taught to believe that this adds worth to your life. And they can't find a man who can help them acquire these expensive, useless status symbols of white society. Then the black girl is probably going to want to do what? Forget about the black man and go and find somebody else.
And this is interesting because I want to get your take on this too, Dr. Johnson. You got me excited tonight. The psychosis, and this is powerful, the psychosis of our thinking. And, you know, when I was just seeking the Lord this week about a specific, more pinpointed topic, the psychosis of identification of identity and economics, here with our special guest, Dr. Umar Johnson. I wanted to see if you agree with this or not. If I'm wrong, check me, Dr. Johnson. I believe that LBJ's Great Society was a tool of destruction, not just to black families, but to a lot of poor families, poor whites, poor browns. And so the origins, the originations, the intent of the Great Society, put in by Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1964 and 65, including the Civil Rights Act, and then the inception from the Great Society, you had the birth of not just ghettos, but the housing projects were birthed and conceived from the Great Society. And so, am I correct in saying that the Great Society has not helped Black America, but has almost destroyed it?
Oh, without question. You are 100% right. From its civil rights bills and its voting rights act and its so-called war on poverty, which was nothing but a war against black males. And for the listeners, because I want to make sure they are clear, they'll probably say, why would they say that when all these programs came out that allegedly benefited black people? And this is the answer to that. The government gives black people programs so we can eat crumbs. But the government never empowers black people to no longer need the government. I'm going to say this again because this is where black people miss it. This is where we miss the ball. We'll say, well, they gave us housing. They gave us medical care. They gave us food stamps. They gave us WIC. They gave us the vote. They gave us the Civil Rights Bill. And nobody can say it even any better than Dr. King when Dr. King said, what good is it can fight for our people to sit at the lunch counter but not have a dollar in their pocket to pay for the lunch at the counter? See, American government, it keeps black people dependent on it on purpose. The government wants black folk to depend on the government. You say, why? Because if you dependent on me for what you need, I will forever control your rate of progress. White America will never have to worry about black America being a serious competitor for the economic and wealth domination of this country as long as black America is dependent on the government. You cannot catch up with white wealth when you're waiting on the government to give you a food stamp. And I want to be clear about something.
Yes, sir.
We're
Yes,
not
sir.
saying that individual African Americans getting help because they need it is a problem. We want to be clear.
Right.
If a mother needs welfare, if the brother needs, something, that's all right. We're not talking individualism. We're talking about systematic action here. The government will give you a program, and the program is only designed to allow you to live off of for a couple of years, and then they get rid of it. And then they start another program for a couple of years, and then they get rid of it. In essence, you know what they're doing? They're laying a rat trap. The same way you lay a rat trap. You put a little piece of cheese, and a little piece of cheese, and a little piece of cheese. See, the rat never sits at the table when you're eating with your family. The rat ain't allowed to sit up there. The rat got to eat on the floor, and the rat gets the cheese. And what the rat don't know, that if you keep on contenting yourself with the cheese, sooner or later, you're going to hit that trap, and it's going to snap your damn neck. So the whole purpose of the cheese trail is to do what? What is the whole purpose of the cheese trail that you lay for the rat? To ultimately entrap and kill the rat. In other words, all the programs that America has ever given black people have been given to black people because they're leading us down a road to ultimate extermination, and they're using the crumbs from the tables of these programs to keep black people so hypnotized by the free handout that we don't even see that we're walking into an extermination chamber.
And you know what, Dr. Johnson, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I've always been a proponent against the Democratic government plantation. I've always said this, Dr. Johnson, and I will continue to say it as a conservative black man, is that the Democratic Party was never designed for black folk. It is nothing more than a slave plantation. And now you got new slave masters now, okay? You got Sharpton, okay? You got Jesse Jackson, okay? You got John Lewis, all right? And Hillary Clinton don't care about black folk. I know why. I don't understand, Dr. Johnson, why black people cannot see that this woman and her husband, and you said this earlier in the broadcast, 3 strikes and you're out in the 1990s, okay? And this woman, who is so supported by black people, she said, and I quote, she called us, black men, predators. Am I correct in saying she called us predators, okay? But yet black people, thank you, super predators. And we still support her. I'm telling you, man, this is mind blowing. And this plantation, and I'm telling you, there is financial gain. Yeah, I want you to hear this, Doctor. You already know this, but to our Global Spiritual Revolution partners, there is financial gain in the psychology of victimhood. Okay? And what I mean by that, you have black folk on the plantation with a victim mentality, with their hands. And like you said, Dr. Johnson, I'm not saying that people, that single mother or that single father or that family, okay, whose daddy lost their job should not get food stamps. I believe that the government should not cut them off. Okay? They should get some support or some structure of a safety net. But I'm talking about healthy, strong black men and women who generationally have been on this plantation. And I believe it goes back to the 1970s, where we begin to see, and check me if I'm wrong, Dr. Johnson, that we begin to see in the 1970s the rise of the single parent household, where you see the government deindustrializing the inner city, because after World War II, well, actually during World War II, black men worked, they had great jobs. Those who did not go over to Europe and to fight a war that we had no business fighting. But anyway, that's another topic for another day. But after the war, those plants, and really specifically in black neighborhoods, going up to the 1970s, they began to de-industrialize the inner city. I mean, when I came up, Dr. Johnson, and forgive me for running my mouth because I'm excited by what you're saying, is that when I came up in junior high or middle school and high school, we had shop classes where you can get a certificate, to be an electrician, an engineer, a brick mason, a welder. We don't have that today. And so this is a conspiracy to castrate not just black men, but men in general, to castrate people who feel like they have no hope. And what say you, man of God?
You're totally correct. And the other thing, too, is we have to look at the correlation between the decline in the teaching and instruction of the industrial building trades in the inner city high schools and the rise of mass incarceration. I mean, literally, they shut down the shops in the 70s, and in the 80s, the prisons start going up. I mean, they literally decided that we're not hiring no more black men, but we will lock them all up. And it's a shame because one of the culprits behind this deindustrialization to prison pipeline is the white labor unions. And I was actually told by a high-ranking member here in Philadelphia of the School Reform Commission that the state put in place to oversee the schools in Philadelphia. I was told specifically by this person that one of the biggest reasons they cannot put the industrial building trade programs back in Philadelphia schools is because the white labor unions don't want them. And the reason the white labor unions don't want them is the white labor unions control who gets trained and they control who gets hired. And if you put the programs back in the high school and you're now graduating certified black male and female industrialists, the white labor unions are going to be forced to hire black people. And they don't want that. They want to control who gets trained, and they want to control who gets the work. There's going to have to be a revolution to bring the industrial building trades back into our schools because college ain't saving black folks. College ain't doing nothing but putting more and more black people into long-term intergenerational debt to the banks of America. It is a shame that so many black folk are being exploited. Their desire to get an education, their desire to improve their life is being exploited by the government, the banks, and the colleges, and putting so many of us into debt because of it. We don't need another liberal arts degree. What we need are people who can use their hands to create their own opportunities in life.
And it's interesting, Dr. Johnson, that after the 1992 LA riots, where we decimated our own community, and then the government, not just the government of the United States, but the city government of the county of Los Angeles had promised the business owners and those families in South Central, we will rebuild your homes, we will build new homes and new condos, and none of that happened, man of God. None of that happened. And so after the 1992 riots, what a lot of these housing corporations did, and through the United States government, they went in and they rebuilt some homes, some condos, some apartments in selective areas in East LA, and specifically in Watts and South Central, and they jacked up the prices, 75, 80%, whereas, your mom and my mother, they bought a house for little to nothing when we came, but now they tripled the price. So after the LA riots, it was a conspiracy to castrate South Central. I mean, it's amazing. And for some reason, people don't see what's going on. What say you? This is interesting.
And the other thing that we have to keep in mind, when they called us up from the southern states to take over the jobs that the whites had abdicated because they had to go fight in the war, they never dealt with the aftermath of what would happen to all these black folks who we enticed to come north for jobs when these white men returned from the war. Listen, there would be no ghetto in Chicago. There would be no ghetto in Detroit. There would be no ghetto in Philadelphia had the government not asked us to come north to fulfill jobs. And then so when the white boys came back, wanted their job back, they laid us off. The ghettos was created as a result of the government giving out mass layoffs of black folk because we were only a temporary fix. We were a temporary fix. But when we came north, we were coming permanently. We weren't coming to work and go back home. We were told we would have jobs for good. And for a while, we did, especially when the factories grew up. But then they deindustrialized the inner city, and that's how they created the ghetto, and they helped the white folks escape with low-interest Federal Housing Authority loans to the suburbs, and they left us trapped into the ghetto and wouldn't even help us own a piece of the ghetto where we live. And one of the reasons they didn't allow us to buy the ghetto is because they knew that white folks would one day want to come back home. They left in the 60s, and they came back in the year 2000 with George W. Bush. That's when the decision was made that white folks were going to take back the cities that they left 40 years ago.
And it's interesting that I believe at that time, the Robert Taylor homes in Chicago, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Johnson, that I believe it was constructed between 1961 to 62, and I believe it was demolished, 2007, around that time. Yeah. And so
Why
the Robert Taylor
the project? Because you get rid of the people.
I was getting ready to say, that's it. And at that time, that was the biggest housing project in the world. And it was this is interesting. So the Robert Taylor homes, was named after Robert Taylor, an African American, who worked on the Chicago Housing Authority with Mayor Richard Daley, a racist. And Robert Taylor was a part of the Chicago Housing Authority, and he himself had nothing to do with black folk, but yet they created the largest plantation ghetto in the world at that time by the name of Robert Taylor. So I believe in the origin of the rootology of person, places, or things. And so this mentality where, like you said, a slave, as long as he has something on his plate in his boat, he doesn't want to change it. So what are the steps? What are the key steps in our remaining minutes here? This is powerful. You got to come back. What are the key steps, Doctor, that we must take? Myself,
two
as a
things
bishop,
we have
as a
to
pastor.
start with.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Two things we have to start with. Education and economics. Those are the most critical. We have to start building our own schools so that we can give our children the right mindset that they need to have in life. See, a lot of this is the mindset and the attitude that you bring to life. Today, I spoke in Baltimore, Maryland, to a beautiful, phenomenal summer camp. Every African-American boy, I went around, and it was boys and girls, and I asked them, what do you want to do with your life? What is your chosen career? Have you thought about what you want to spend the rest of your life doing? And every boy, basketball or football or rap, every last one. That means we're failing them. Because if black boys think the only thing they can be is a basketball player, a football player, or a rapper, then we are not properly orienting them to the world in which they're going to have to exist. We have to train them with the right mindset, and it is also a function of miseducation, because although he might be good at basketball, although he may love football, he needs to be educated about the fact that the white man that will sign his paycheck makes more in a day than he will make in his whole career. And we have to teach them the economics, and that's why every black school must have a economic empowerment curriculum for black children. They must be taught taxes. They must be taught investing in foreign. They must be taught the real estate market. They must be taught this because these are the subjects that dominate the wealth of America, and they are not being taught to black children. Black history is important. Black history is critical. Yes, we will teach them who they are, but without the economic education, they will simply know who they are and still be broke.
Busted and almost disgusted at it. I noticed from your powerful book, Psycho-Academic Holocaust, the Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys. And for our Global Spiritual Revolution partners and listeners, what is ADHD, number one? And two, how is that why are young black boys being diagnosed with that? I mean, where is the root of this attention deficit hyperactivity disorder from your perspective, sir?
The root of ADHD actually
Yes.
goes back to the exact same thing we're talking about, and that is the deindustrialization of the cities in the 70s, and then the drug epidemic of the 80s, and then the Bill Clinton crime bill of the 90s. We get ADD in 1980. The same year the CIA dropped off crack, they dropped off Ritalin. The same year. They started drugging up the children. The same time they start drugging up the adults. It wasn't called Ritalin yet, but that's what they were giving out. And so what happened was when they started taking fathers away from sons, when they started clearing men out of the house, the boy is left without a man to teach him self-control, emotional discipline. And with the father not being there, the boy now becomes more unruly, more undisciplined. So they sent the psychiatrist in with this new label. It was first called ADD in 1980, attention deficit disorder. And then in 1987, it grew to ADHD, which is a man-made glow-in-the-dark disorder, which is nothing more than what I call ain't no daddy at home disorder, ADHD. You don't need drugs. Give him his daddy back.
And you talk about that not just post-traumatic stress disorder, but post-traumatic slave disorder. It's just, again, I even as myself as a bishop, as a minister, I see a lot of black pastors and bishops, Dr. Johnson, though they are preaching the gospel, but they themselves mentally, psychologically, they're still enslaved. Okay, they're still enslaved, and they're bringing in, like you said in this stat earlier, and I heard this in your Breakfast Club interview, $14 million a Sunday that the black church is bringing in. Okay, no schools, no jobs, no hospitals, no supermarkets. Okay, and what I'm about to say, I'm not an advocate. This is just me, and what I'm about to say to our Global Spiritual Revolution partners. This is from Bishop Gators. This is not from Dr. Johnson. That during segregation, we had more black millionaires during segregation. We had more black farmers. We had more black business owners. The first cab company was owned by black folk. This was during segregation, Dr. Johnson. Now, after segregation, and again, I'm not a proponent of segregation, but what I'm saying and what Dr. Johnson is saying, that to understand the psychosis of identification in economics, this goes back emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, is that during segregation, black folk had to rely on each other. Am I correct in saying this, sir?
Yes, you are. Very much correct. And the Achilles heel of that, we did do better under segregation. But the question is why? And that's the Achilles heel. And the reason we did better under segregation is because we were forbidden. We were forbidden. We were forbidden from participating in the white political, economic, and social reality. So the reason we had those black hospitals, and the reason we had those black schools, and the reason we had those black gas stations and black communities was only only because white folks wouldn't let us share in on theirs. See, we got to understand something. America never, ever integrated black folks. It only declared desegregation. That's it, which means that we're not going to do anything to guarantee participation in the mainstream America, but we're just going to remove the legal barriers to opposition from it, which is to say that no black person can say government integrated us. The government never integrated us. It only desegregated us. It was black people who integrated themselves. We would still have those schools. We would still have those hospitals. The problem was, although we did well by ourselves, deep down inside of us, that psychosis was there. That psychosis was there, and we couldn't wait for the opportunity to sit at the table with our former slave masters.
Oh, man, this has been a powerful broadcast. I'm telling you, Dr. Johnson, we have to bring you back for part 2. I know you're busy. This is a man to our Global Spiritual Revolution partners who is one of the America's most powerful, not just black clinical psychologists, but clinical psychologists, period, and certified school psychologists out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And how can people donate into your ministry, into your movement, and also how can they donate to build this all-black male school in Philadelphia? Is there a link for that, man of God?
Definitely. They can go to GoFundMe.com/DRUMAR. So that's GoFundMe.com/Dr. Umar. They can also go to the website, drumarjohnson.com, drumarjohnson.com, where they can mail in their donation payable to FDMG Academy, P6872, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19132. And they can reach me by phone at 844-4-DRUMAR. Again, that's 844-4-Dr. Umar. And let me also say that tomorrow morning, every Tuesday, I host a free Black Parent Teleconference. If any of your listeners are parents raising black children and they have questions about those children as it relates to education or mental health, they can call in and get free answers to their questions tomorrow morning, every Tuesday, 6 a.m. until 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the phone number is 857-232-0158. Again, 857-232-0158, and the access code for the Black Parent Teleconference is 870-864-POUND, 870-864-POUND.
Dr. Johnson, thank you so much, my brother, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. It is because you travel not just all over this country, but all over the world, bringing a liberation not just to black people, but to all people who want to yearn and are hungry for truth and justice in God. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you very much, and blessings to your listeners.
Thank you so much. And that was Dr. Umar Johnson, all the way from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We talked tonight concerning the psychosis of identity and economics here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. I want to thank again to all of our listeners tonight, and I want to announce quickly that there will be no broadcast tomorrow night. Okay, there will be no broadcast tomorrow night. So our guest that was scheduled for tomorrow night cannot come on, but we will give you more information and details in the coming days and weeks. Thank you to all of our Global Spiritual Revolution partners from all over the world, and especially a lot of brand new Global Spiritual Revolution partners, again, from Nigeria, from Morocco, from Cairo, Egypt, A lot of you listening online from the Republic of the Congo. A lot of you in South Africa. A lot of you in Tanzania. Thank you for listening to Global Spiritual Revolution Radio and Media Group, and to all of our brand new Revolution partners as well throughout Europe. Okay, London, England, Sheffield, England. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. And again, I just want to reiterate, not to beat a dead horse, that we will not have a broadcast tomorrow night, okay? But we will have a broadcast on Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Again, I just want to make mention to all of our brand new Global Spiritual Revolution partners in Europe, not just in the United Kingdom, but also those in the nation of Georgia, which is in Eastern Europe. Thank you for joining Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Also, those in the nation, in the nation of Luxembourg City, Luxembourg, there in Central Europe. Thank you for joining the global revolution of Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. And to all of you around the world, we will see you next time. We love you. We honor you in the Lord Jesus Christ. And for we, together, are raising the consciousness of mankind to become the consciousness of Jesus Christ. And we had Dr. Umar Johnson, all the way from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the Psychosis of Identity and Economics, here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Good night from New York City. This is Bishop Larry King. In Jesus' mighty name. God bless you. See you next time.
And now, insurance-minded speeches from Geico.
It's a common expression, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. However, what if the horse's mouth is filled with useful insurance tools? This is the exact case with the Geico app. Yes, the app is free and therefore a gift horse. However, look inside the app and behold, emergency roadside assistance, digital ID cards, bill pay. Get the Geico app. Look it in the mouth, get amazing services. Thank you.